Okay, so last part of 5.2 we'll look at right now, still on substitution, and most of the steps are going to be exactly the same. So yesterday we went over situation 1, okay? So situation 1, the equations always had something for you right away. And we just talked about it. Can someone remind me, in the kind of substitution we did yesterday, what always happened right away when you were given the problem? Like how were the problems set up for you? James?
Variable.
Yeah, you always had a variable by itself, either the x or the y. Okay? So you didn't have to do any rearranging. No rearranging at all. Okay? Today, we're going to take a look at systems of linear equations where you have to rearrange. Right? So this is situation number 2 on your guided notes. And when we say rearrange, we don't just mean just do whatever you want. You have to do something specific. You have to get, or isolate, same thing. You have to get a variable by itself on the left-hand side. Do you need a pencil or anything, Jade? No? Okay. Did you write it down? Okay. So, you've got to get a variable by itself on the left side. You can pick. You can either get the x variable by itself or the y variable. It does not matter which one you do. You also get to pick the equation. You could say, okay, I'm going to try to get x by itself in the top. Or I'm going to try to get x by itself in the bottom. Right? So now there's lots of ways to do these problems. Lots of ways. Okay? So you might do it one way. I might choose to do it a different way. All right. So couple reminders of how to get something by itself. If you had something like this, this is very easy to get a letter by itself here. There isn't one, but it's easy to do with one step. So if you have an x on the same side with a single y, all you have to do is the opposite operation to the x and move it to the other side, and you're done. That would be the only extra step. So look at that equation. Does that equation have an x and a single y on the same side? Anything, Kelsey? Does that equation have an x with a single y on the same side? So a single y would look just like this. Yeah. If it wasn't a single y, it would look something like this. There'd be like a number with it. So, Leilani, how could I move this negative 5x to the other side? Yeah. All you'd have to do is add it. And Blake, once I add it, what's on the left?
What side is the left again?
The left?
Yeah.
The side that's not the right.
What side is that? The side?
The side closer to me.
Oh, okay. Why?
Y. So y equals, and now, what would Maya? What would be on the right?
What?
What would be on the right?
Like the whole answer? Oh, okay. Plus 5x, plus 26.
Plus 26. Perfect. So she said 5x plus 26. You could have done 26 plus 5x. That's the same thing. Okay. Now, Lucas, do we have a letter by itself there?
Yeah, why?
Yeah. Now we have y by itself. So if you have an x on the same side with just a single y, move the thing that has a number with the x. Could you get x by itself in this equation? Definitely. But it's a lot more work to get the x by itself because it has a 5 attached to it. It's a lot easier to get the y by itself because it has nothing attached to it. Okay? That's why we picked it. Now, kind of the same idea, but just switching the letters. Let's say you had a y on the same side with a single x. It's going to be easier to get x by itself because there's nothing attached to it. Y would be hard to get by itself here because you'd have to get rid of the x, and then you'd have to get rid of that -4 to get y by itself. So there's two things you'd have to do to get y by itself. So what could we do on both sides here that would get x by itself in one step? James?
Plus 4y.
Yeah. Plus 4y. Plus 4y. And Princess, what's -4y plus 4y? How much? That would be 4 plus 4. This is -4 plus 4. 0 cancels out. So now you have x equals, and that was the whole goal. You wanted to get a letter by itself. -2 plus 4y. Now, if you didn't want to write it as -2 plus 4y, can somebody tell me the other order you could put that in? What's -2 plus 4y the same as? Adrian? Yeah. 4y minus 2. Yeah. 4y minus 2, same thing. Okay. But the point is you just have to do something first to get the variable by itself. Yeah. Yep.
Can I water bottle real quick?
Yeah, can you just wait for it doesn't come in? Okay, so on your guided notes where it says steps to solve linear equations, okay, we're going to write out the steps. Most of these steps are the same steps as yesterday. Okay? The only extra step is doing what I just showed you first. Other than that, everything is the same. So, step 1. Choose an equation to rearrange. Basically, you could shorten that up by saying, choose the equation to rearrange that looks easier. Whichever one you think looks easier. What makes an equation look easy in math? You have a single variable with nothing attached to it. If you attach stuff to it, that makes it harder. Okay, so choose the equation to rearrange that always has a single variable. Most of the time, I'm going to give you an equation with a single variable. When you take Algebra 1b or when you get into Algebra 2, you may not always have something like this. You may not always have an equation that has a variable without a number attached. You might have an equation like this. Now you don't have an equation with just a variable, with a coefficient of 1. Now they have one has a 3, one has a 5. That's going to make it harder to get x or y by itself. Okay, but for you guys, we're always going to have one that either has just an x or just a y. Okay? You're not going to have numbers in front of both x and y. Not in Algebra 1. Okay, so once you do that, you rearrange the equation to get the variable by itself. How do you do that? Those were the reminders I just gave you on the page before. Now, the second thing, I didn't read this off, but hopefully you guys copied it down. It says if both equations have a single variable, like this, you can pick either variable to get by itself. You want to get the x by itself? Fine. You want to get the y by itself? That's fine too. Okay. So when both equations have the single variable, you can do either one. Either get x by itself or y by itself. But what if I did that? In the equation that I just circled, which letter is easier to get by itself now? The y. Go for the one that doesn't have the number attached. Okay, that's the one you want to get by itself. You're not wrong if you don't do that, but you're going to have a lot harder time. Okay, so don't try to do that. Okay. So let's look at this equation. So what we're going to do is we're going to do a problem as I give you the steps. I'll give you a step, we'll do it in a problem. Okay. So first, let's see if this is situation 1. Let's see if this is what we did yesterday. And maybe we don't even need to do what we're learning right now. Does either one of these equations already have a variable isolated on one side? No. You don't have an x or a y by itself in the top. You don't have an x or a y by itself in the bottom. Okay, so this is situation 2. That's what we're learning today. Which equation here, top or bottom, do you think it's easier to get a letter by itself? Yep, the bottom. I agree. I think it's going to be easier to do the bottom. Now, Jaden, which letter do you think is easier in the bottom to get by itself? The y, yes. So, we're going to get y by itself in the bottom. That's the easiest one to do. Somebody else tell me, how do you get y by itself? What do you have to do on both sides? Careful, if we add 3x to 3x, we're going to get 6x. So, Joe? Subtract what?
3x.
Yep. And subtract 3x there. Right. So if I do that, Tristan, what would I have on the left-hand side after I do that?
Y.
Yep, y equals. And Gianna, what would I have on the right side?
6
Yep.
minus 3x.
Perfect. So now, that is your new equation you're going to use. This one up here, you can cross it out. We're done. We're not using it anymore. We rearranged it. Okay? So we're going to use, that's going to be my first equation. That's going to be my second.
Doesn't it need to be plain, y plus m?
Only if you're going to graph it.
Okay.
If you're not going to graph it, that's technically okay. You're not wrong if you want to do this. That's exactly the same thing. Okay? If you do that, that's probably a good habit to get into, but it's not necessary if you're not graphing. Okay? Okay, so now we've got y by itself in the second equation. The rest of the steps are exactly the same as yesterday. So now we're just going to review what they are. You already have them, but I wrote room for you to write them a second time. So that way, like if you wanted to use this as your reference sheet, this covers the most complicated case you can have. Yesterday's guided notes don't, but this one does. So this one covers everything. Okay, step 2. Put parentheses around the group of stuff, and then you're going to put parentheses around the single letter. Okay, just like we did yesterday. 2x plus 3y equals 4. Y equals 6 minus 3x. Okay. Which equation here is going to have parentheses around the group of stuff? The top one or the bottom one?
The bottom one.
The bottom one. And what's going to be the group of stuff that has parentheses around it?
6 subtract by 3x.
6 minus 3x. Perfect. Now, what do you put parentheses around in the top one?
Y.
Just the y. Now, the next step you guys already know. So before I even show you step 3, what's going to be what is step 3? What do you do next?
Distribute.
Plug in.
Not yet. Distribute's going to come up after we do something. We're going to have to do that eventually. But,
Plug in.
yep. Aileen, what do you plug in?
No, 6 minus 3x into where the y is on the first equation.
Exactly. I'm not going to do it at this step. I'll do it in step 3. So now solve the equation with the stuff plugged in. Okay, so we have to plug the stuff in next. All right. Well, Julia, can you tell me what my top equation will look like with the stuff plugged in? So take the top equation, but we only have to fill in the one thing that's changing. Just like we did yesterday. So what's going to change in that top equation? We're not going to write that in the next step. We're going to get rid of it. What are we getting rid of? We're getting rid of the y. And what are we going to put in place of it? Yep. So I just want you to tell me if you do exactly what you just said. How would I write it down? Yep. Exactly. 2x plus 3, and then 6 minus 3x. That's what you plugged in for y, equals 4. And now, Lucas, you just told me what we were going to do at this step.
Distribute.
Yep. So now we're going to distribute and see what we get. Yeah, you want to tell me, Lucas?
Well, I did how 3x subtracted, like negative 3x subtracted by 6.
Yeah, you can do it that way too. We'll continue doing it this way.
Okay, so
But if you had negative 3x plus 6, that's okay.
we got 18 subtracted by 9x.
So we're going to have the 2x in front. 3 times 6 is 18. And 3 times negative 3, negative 9x. Perfect. Sophia, what would I do now at this step?
You would minus 18 on both sides. Oh, wait, no.
Something we got to do
You
first.
would do 2x plus 9x
2x minus 9x.
minus
And what would that be?
7x. 2x.
2x minus 9x.
I don't know.
You want to help her out? What's 2x take away 9x?
Oh, negative 7x.
Negative 7x. Okay. Now, the next step, she had said minus the 18. Now you can minus the 18. Minus 18. Minus 18. And 4 minus 18. How about Elizabeth? What's 4 minus 18?
14. Negative.
Yep, good job. Negative 14. Last step. Divide each side by what number? Negative 7. Good. Negative 7. Negative 7. That's gone. What's negative 14 divided by negative 7?
2.
2. Okay. So as far as the work in the problem, you've done like 90% of the work. But there's still one more thing you have to find. What's the other thing we have to find? We still have to find the y. So that's step 4. Take the number that you just got and plug it back into the equation that we rearranged. Now, I can't tell you plug it in for x or plug it in for y. In this problem, you're plugging it in for x. But it depends on how you did step 1. You could have x right now, or you could have y right now. I don't know which letter you're always going to get first. Depends on how you decide to solve it. Okay. But whichever letter you found first, find the other one now. So I'm going to scroll back up just so I can see the equation that we rearranged. Y equals 6 minus 3x. That's the easiest equation you can use to find y. Why is this equation easier to find y than the top equation? I mean, technically, you could use either one. All you have to do now is just fill in 2 for x. So you could do it on the top or the bottom. But why is the bottom easier? James?
Less.
Yeah, there's less steps because look at where y is. You're trying to get y, and y is already by itself. So we're going to use that one. Y equals 6 minus 3x. And Blake, what are we plugging in for x? You'd have to get it from your notes. It's not on the screen right now.
Negative, just 2.
Just 2, yeah. So 6 minus 3 times 2. Okay, so do that out, and then that's our answer for y. Adriana, what's 3 times 2? So we got 3 times 2 is 6. And Aileen, 6 minus 6?
0.
0. So there's your answer for y. So remember, 2 ways you can write your answer. X, comma y. You can write it like that. Or you might see something like this on the test. X equals, put a 2. Y equals, and put a 0. Either way is fine. Yep, to step 4. Yep. Okay, so when we do the review tomorrow, sometimes we get like 10, 11 questions in. These take a little longer to do. So when we do it, we might only get to like 4 or 5 substitution problems tomorrow. Especially with the MCAS question first. So that's why I'm probably going to do 1 point for every question you get right, instead of like 1 point for every 2 questions. I don't think we'll have enough time to get 10 questions in tomorrow.
Are we allowed to use our notes for the questions?
For what we're doing in class, the review? Yeah. Yep. But on the test, you can only use 1 sheet of paper. And I do have a review guide for you tomorrow night. It's kind of like the problems we're going to do in class, but they're a little different. Okay. Does everybody have steps 4 and 5? Now, just to kind of tie it in with what we did on Monday, if you graphed each one of these lines, where would they cross? At 2, 0. That's exactly right. So if you were to graph them, they would cross at that point. So we found where they would cross without actually having to make a graph. And we've talked about why graphing's not the best. All right, so we've got a couple problems, and then let me see. So that's that. So that's non-word problem, non-word problem. All right, so no more word problems in this section because we did it. Okay. So maybe I'll go through like one more with you guys, and then I'll give you guys 1 or 2 to try on your own. Okay, first question. Is this situation 1 where you already have a variable by itself? No. So now we have to decide. We're either going to get something by itself in the top or the bottom. Which equation here is it going to be easier to get a letter by itself? Top or bottom? Top. Okay, so we made the decision we're going to work with the top. Now we have to make the decision on the letter. Do you want to get x by itself or y by itself? X. It's always good to get the single letter by itself. It's the easiest way to do it. Okay. What would be your 1 step to get x by itself there? Yep, what would you subtract? If you subtract x, that will not get x by itself. So when you want to get something by itself, leave that thing alone.
Wait, what are we taking out?
we're getting x by itself. So you want to move everything that's not x. Leave x alone.
Subtract 2y.
Yes, subtract 2y. So whatever you're getting by itself, leave that alone. Move everything else. That's gone. X equals, and Joe, can you tell me what you'd have on the other side?
-7 minus 2y.
Perfect. I'm going to use that, and I'm going to use that. Forget about this. That's gone. We rearranged it. We're never going to use that again for the rest of this problem. We're going to use that and that. Okay? So now we're ready to set it up and plug in. In equation 2, where do I put parentheses? On which side? On the right side. Put parentheses around all the stuff that's on the other side with the single letter. And now in equation 1, which letter gets parentheses around it? X. And what am I going to do with that -7 minus 2y? Yeah. I'm going to plug it in right there. And then go through the problem like we always do. So we're going to have 5. Leave a little bit of space next to the 5. Plus, how about, Kayla, what's going to come right after the plus? Yep, 3y equals, and how about, Leilani, what's going to come after the equals? 7. Now we're just going to fill in for x. Olivia, what am I filling in for x?
-7 minus y.
Minus 2y. Perfect. Okay, Lucas, you're usually all over this. What's our next step here?
Distribute.
Distribute. Okay, so we got to distribute. If you need your calculator, I'll have one you can use. 5 times -7. What's 5 times -2y?
-10y.
-10y. Perfect. After you distribute, the next step is usually to do what the 3 letters.
Oh, come on.
Combine like terms, CLT. Combine like terms. Is the -35 going to combine with anything? No, that just stays right where it is. What's -10y plus 3y? Yep. Yep, nice job, -7y. Okay, and let's see, we're getting there. Next step in this equation. We have two steps left. Yep. Good job. Add 35. So -7y equals, what's 35 plus 7?
43.
Yep, 42. And now my last step. Yep. Divide by -7. All that's gone. And does that go in evenly? Does 7 go into 42? It's going to be negative, but yep, so it'll be -6. Okay. So now we've got y. What do I do with it? Right, we're going to plug the y back in. Which equation do you think is easier? Because we got to find x. Should I plug it into equation 1 or equation 2? Okay, so Princess says we should plug it into the first one. You could. I would plug it into the second one. Anybody know why I would pick the second one? The x is already by itself. If you plug it into the first one, you're going to have to get x by itself, which you can do. That's fine. But I think it's going to be faster to just plug it in right there. So then you would just have x equals -7 minus 2, and then fill in what we just got for y. lot of negatives here, so just be careful. PEMDAS, what do you do next? Negative 7 minus 2 or minus 2 times minus 6?
Minus 2 times minus 6.
Yep. And a negative 2 times a negative 6. Negative times negative is positive. 2 times 6 gives you 12. And now we just have to simplify that. What's negative 7 plus 12? How much? 5. Yep. So x equals 5. Y equals negative 6. Perfect. Any question on that one? All right, so we got 2 left. I think we're just going to pick one. Let's go like this. And I'm going to let you guys give it a shot. Do you want to try 1C or 1D?
1C.
1C? Okay. So, try 1C. Okay. Just so you kind of get started off on the right step. Which equation here do you think is going to be the easiest to get a letter by itself? The top or the bottom?
Either.
Well, you're looking to get a letter by itself that just has a 1 next to it. Does the top one have a variable with a 1 next to it?
Yeah, but it's negative.
But it's negative, so it's not a 1, it's a negative 1. How about the bottom equation? Does that have a variable with a 1 next to it?
Yeah.
Then do that one. Okay? Do the one that has a 1 next to the variable, not a negative 1. Negative 1 wouldn't be that bad. There'd be a little bit of extra to fix. So, pick
But
the,
you could technically do
you could. Yep. You could, but it's going to involve an extra step you probably won't really like. All right, so let's, if you're still working, that's fine, but let's start to go through it. Just make sure we get it done in the next 5 minutes. So we picked the bottom equation. And which letter did we get by itself in the bottom? Which one? Y. How did you get y by itself?
Adding 4x to both sides.
Perfect. Add 4x to both sides. That's gone. Y equals negative 19 plus 4x. All right, so there's our equation. Do we need this bottom one anymore? No, cross it out, it's gone. You've rearranged it, you never need to use it again. That's equation 1. That's equation 2. Now, what are we going to do with this negative 19 plus 4x? Yeah, where are we going to plug it in? We're going to plug it in right there to the y. So let's do that and just write it very carefully. So now you're going to have 2x minus, keep the parentheses, leave a little bit of space to fill in for the y, negative 19 plus 4x, which are equals, and 7. Now, what are you really distributing when it's just a minus?
A negative sign.
It's like you're distributing just the negative, like a negative 1. What's negative 1 times negative 19?
19.
So it just changes the sign. What's negative 1 times 4x? Negative 4x. Hey, what are my like terms I can combine on the left? Yeah. Yep. 2x minus 4x is how much? Negative 2x plus 19 equals 7. 2 steps left. What's my...
Is it negative?
Was it originally negative 7? No. Positive 7. What's my second to last step? Subtract 19. Subtract 19, that's gone. What's 7 minus 19? Yeah, negative 12. Yep. And James, what would be my last step? And then I'll have x by itself. Yep. Divide by negative 2. Divide by negative 2. That's gone. And you get x equals 6. Now, you could get that different ways. So if you got 6 for x, then you did it right. Now, last step, what do we do with the 6?
Plug it in.
Yep. And you always want to plug it back into the equation that has the letter by itself. Okay, so y equals negative 19 plus, I scrolled off the page. What are we filling in for x? 6? What's 4 times 6? 24. And then if I needed to, I could use my calculator for that. But negative 19 plus 24 will give you 5. Yep. Okay, so notice most of the answers here, I have them coming out nice. That's usually how it's going to be on the test. You're not going to have crazy decimals most of the time.
Healthy and genius.
Okay, so homework tonight is, okay guys, I'm still talking, even though we're done notes, it doesn't mean that you can just start talking. Homework tonight, 5.2 part 2. Tomorrow, MCAS and review. I'll be after school if you need to see me for extra help. And then Friday, what are we doing on Friday?
Test.
Doing the test. What else happens on Friday?
We go home.
Progress reports. Good job.
Oh my god, it's so